heavily involved in negotiation with Andreas Schwab on the Digital Markets Act. So with this, I'll hand over to Senator. Please, I beg your pardon. I'm my co-organizer. I almost made a fatal mistake there. Ambassador, please, you would like to say a few words, and then we'll hand over to Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dunn. I hope you can hear me. I thought there are some trouble in the communication. I would just like to again here we were serving and the cyber security in the focus, and I would like to thank her. We are proud of her. She's the chairwoman of the group of friendship in the U.S. Senate, and this topic now, which is so pending, digitalization, and working together with the big techs in the way to regulate so that our democracies will be flourishing. It's really important. So I would like to thank you once again. The parliamentarians are actually laying the fundament for all this, and we'll be working together. So thank you once again, and I'm looking forward to this discussion where our Minister Andrijanič will also participate. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you, Ambassador. Please.
Very good. You want me to go ahead? All right. Well,
please.
First wanted to thank you, Joseph, and thank you to the ambassador and to the chair. What an incredible group, minister involved to talk about this really important issue. And yes, I'm proud to be Slovenian. I'm the only senator now that we're getting through the pandemic. I can go back to this that serves a Slovenian pizza every Thursday to visitors to my office. I'm also half Swiss, so you can imagine my interest in the Winter Olympics is pretty intense. And I had so much fun last night watching the figure skating, if I could note, with gold medal winner Nathan Chen from our country. But we have many Minnesotans, including about half of the women's hockey team and the majority of the curling team, the men's curling team from my state. And I know many of the countries in the European region and the Union have many athletes as well. So in that spirit of cooperation and goodwill, I am happy to be on this call. And one thing we share, in addition to incredible spirit of cooperation between Europe and the US, I'll be heading to the Munich Security Conference soon. We know how important this unity is with many challenges around the world. But the one thing we know we also share is a monopoly problem, especially in our digital markets, where a handful of powerful corporations stand as virtual gatekeepers to the global digital economy. You saw that in Australia, where two companies, in that case, Facebook and Google, literally tried to hold an entire nation hostage when they simply tried to have them charge a fair rate for their news. You see it with Google in that they have driven out most of other players, and they control more than 90% of the online search market, dominating huge swaths of the digital economy like digital advertising, advertising tech, online video, online browsers, mapping services, and so much more. And I want to say from the outset, in America, we are proud of these companies. Here's my iPhone. I have on a Fitbit. We're proud of the technology we have brought to the world, the many employees that work there, the innovations, and especially during this pandemic, we've seen how important these products are. But that doesn't mean, as you look at American history, that just because something is successful, like say AT&T or Standard Oil, that we just stand back and say, okay, great, they own the whole marketplace. We actually like to rejuvenate our capitalism in America, and that means making sure we have some rules of the road when it comes to things like not self-preferencing your own product. And that's what we believe we're seeing, where the companies are no longer just platforms, they're also promoting competitive products that actually aren't just competitive, they're allowing, because of their platform, them to dominate. So we have currently no laws on the books in the US that prevent these companies from using their market power to self-preference their own products and services over their competitors. That means if you're planning a vacation to Minnesota, which I know you want to do in the middle of the winter, Google has free reign to steer you to Google Flight Service it owns, while potentially suppressing other companies. The Wall Street Journal, and here's another example, reported that an Amazon employee working on new products accessed data on a car trunk organizer manufactured by a third-party seller called Fortum, a 4-person company run by 2 29-year-olds. So cool that they developed this product. So sad that when they had to sell it on Amazon, is it the place to sell, they then got copied, and Amazon launched 3 trunk organizers that were similar to Fortum's under its own Amazon Basics. These practices are bad for entrepreneurs, innovators, and consumers alike. I love that we are discussing this on both in our Congress right now, that we're actually, for the first time since the advent of the internet, passing bills through the Judiciary Committee in the Senate after a major investigation in the House. And I know the European Union has made huge progress on the Digital Markets Act to promote competition and fairness in digital markets. I'm proud to have worked with Executive Vice President Vestager about this important legislation, and I've walked with keen interest what Chair Cavazzani and MEP Schwab, as well as MEP Schaldemose, almost harder than my name, and their colleagues have done to advance the bill that the Digital Service Act has in the European Parliament. And so we're excited about what's happening. And I want to be clear that this is big action going on in the US. I got major senators from incredibly different ideological beliefs to unite and co-sponsor our legislation, which has some similarities to the Digital Market Act, and got it through the Judiciary Committee on a 16-6 vote. We also have the App Store bill that got through on a 21-1 vote. The final issue I wanted to bring up with data privacy. If you're an American, you have a Facebook account, your data brought in $51 to Facebook in a single quarter last year. But if you're a European Facebook user, your data only brought in $17 because of some regulations. And remember, we have nothing in place on the federal level in America when it comes to privacy laws. We're starting to have more and more state laws, but we'd really like to see a federal law as well when it comes to privacy. I'm in this fight because I believe this is our moment to ensure that future generations around the world can benefit from a competitive digital marketplace and take advantage of tech innovations without sacrificing privacy, without sacrificing the bells and whistles that you get when you have true competition. I mean, we'll never know what WhatsApp or Instagram could have done. We won't know because Mark Zuckerberg bought them. And in his infamous words in an email, I'd rather buy than compete. That is what's going on right now. And I look forward to hearing from the other panelists and answering whatever questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. So I propose that we, if it's okay with the ambassador, to hear first from the European Parliament side and then hear afterwards from the Council of Ministers side. So I would ask Chair Cavazzani to say a few words, and then after that, Andreas Schwab, and then Christel Schaldemose, just to give the range of opinions on the European Parliament side.
Very good.
Chair Cavazzani.
Yeah, with pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. I really hope you can hear me because I had a lot of internet problems here in the European Parliament. So please give me a sign if I'm interrupted because you were interrupted all the time. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to have this transatlantic roundtable, and especially with having the perspective of the parliamentarians, of the legislators from both sides of the Atlantic. And when I listen to Senator Klobuchar, I can really sense a lot of common ground. And I think we really share the common goal of regulating the digital world in such a way that it is at the end beneficial for the users, for the consumers, and also for businesses, for smaller businesses, for example. Because I mean, I think you said something very interesting, this notion on capitalism, and probably like 10 years ago as a student activist, I would have never thought that I defend capitalism. But I mean, what we see at the moment, it's more like an oligarchy or something. It's not even a functioning capitalist market anymore, because the competition is completely not there anymore. And you rightly pointed to the problems connected with that. So I find it really fascinating also what you just proposed in your political arena. And I would be really interested to know from you also, what kind of chance does this have at the moment? The bills, for example, you proposed that this really passes at the end Congress and so on. Also, I would be interested to know from you, to be very honest, if the content that you are proposing is very similar to what we are discussing in the European Parliament. Because as you know, the two big files, and they were mentioned already, the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act are at the moment in their final stage. And I don't go so much into detail because we have our two great rapporteurs here with us who will probably talk a little bit more about the details. But of course, what we have in mind as a political goal with these two pieces of legislation is to have clear responsibilities for platforms, even like including surveillance advertising and also tackling the algorithm problem. We want to have fair competition. I mentioned it at the beginning, and we want to have really strengthened rights for consumers and users. And this is the umbrella goals that we want to target with this legislation. And I think it would be really interesting to hear from you also how this aligns with your ideas. Next to the DSA and the DMA, we are also working now on the Artificial Intelligence Act. So it will be the first European legislation act ever on regulating artificial intelligence. And of course, with that, we also want to set technological gold standards. We have other important files in the making, but I will not mention all of them. I just want to say at the end that I find it really important to cooperate on the transatlantic level. I think it is interesting that now, after the last US election, this is strengthened again, fortunately. This also led to the creation of the Trade and Technology Council. And I think this fora really gives an interesting opportunity for the European side, for the American side, to discuss and to really have a common ground on a values-based tech policy. Let's put it like this. What is, of course, very important for us as parliamentarians, and I want to mention it again, is that we at the end, of course, have the final word on the legislation, and that we also get a stronger parliament perspective in the TCC. So I'm looking forward to the discussion with you, and thank you again for invitation to this roundtable.
Yeah, Andreas Schwab.
Thank you. And I look forward, by the way, later to answering those questions after we hear from everyone about the chances and the similarities. So go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. We're doing this sort of European style. I know in the US here, I've discovered it's better one-on-one interactive, but I think since we have three actors on the European Parliament side, we let Andreas and Christel speak first, if that's okay.
Of course. Are you saying you're more fair or something as opposed to our? Just
no, that's so. Just different style.
Well, anyhow,
right.
Thank you so much, Senator Klobuchar, for being with us today, and also for your strong commitment. Because we have always been saying that the Europeans and the Americans have the same values and share the same political goals in principle, and that we have to fight and to stand for. And your contribution in the Senate is outrageous. We are very respectful of this. And I think especially in these difficult times, it has been helped a lot. Building on what our chairwoman, Anna Cavazzani, has said, that we want to make our market economy work properly for users and citizens, and also for businesses. I think it is important that we stick together on that, given all the problems that at the moment are around in the world. And we have shared, because of the European Commission's decision, the two legal proposals. The one that I have to defend in Parliament is about the biggest companies and about competition. So it's about the biggest problems in detail. And I may say that I'm sure that Christel Schaldemose, my hardworking colleague from the Social Democrats, is doing something that is covering all platforms, because there are differences. We share common values that we want to be defended all over the place. And we have some specific problems that we have to consider with the biggest platforms. And that's my piece. I'm very proud that we have the chance to speak today, because I'm also the chairman of the European Swiss delegation. And as you have parts of your family from Switzerland, this is very good to know. And I pass over to Christel.
Oh, thank you, Andreas. That was very fast. I expected that you would talk much longer. But Senator, it's a pleasure listening to you. And I'm happy that we have this chance of having this exchange of view. And there's no doubt that I myself really love the fact that I can do so many things online, and the citizens, they do love it. They shop online, they meet people online, they work online. So, a bigger part of our lives takes place online. That's really, really good. But since that's the case, it's also important for us to make sure that we have a level playing field, both between offline and online world. But we also need to look into the business models of the platforms, and then we need to have more transparency and accountability for the platforms for what they are doing. And here I'm thinking about algorithms. We need to know more. We need to make them accountable, not for what we post on Facebook, but how they use the content we are putting on the platforms. They need to be more responsible and accountable. So we're trying to do that with the DSA. And it's true, the DSA covers all the platforms. So there will be obligations for all. But we will have more obligations on the bigger ones and less on the smaller ones. That's also a question of fairness. And then we're very keen to make sure that users of the platforms have more rights, so they can complain, that they have easier access to the platforms. And if there has been removal of content, then they have a chance to complain. And if it's not if it's shown afterwards that it was not illegal, then it will be put on the platform again. So we're trying to do a lot of things. But one of the new things we're trying to do, and this here I think could be really interesting to hear your point of view on us as well, that's the business model of the platforms, because they're take one of the biggest social media. They want us to stay longer, because the longer we stay on the platform, the more they know about us, and the more they know about us, the easier it is for them to target us with advertisement. And in a European context, that is a bit challenging with our data protection rules, and therefore we're looking into what can we do, especially to protect minors. But we also have a discussion in general about how to do this. So I think here it could be interesting to hear also your considerations about the business model. How does it work seen from your perspective? I like the platforms and I want them to keep on being able to make business. However, I also think it needs to be fair, and we need to make sure that users are protected so that they don't just harvest every kind of data on us and profile us on it and sell that to others. And people don't really understand what is happening. So this is some of the things we're also discussing. But business models, level playing fields, users' rights, transparency and accountability, I would say that's the headlines of the DSA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Schaldemose. So we're very privileged to have also the other co-legislator represented. So we have Minister Andrijanič. So if you could speak for a few moments and then finally get back to Senator Klobuchar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for this opportunity. I apologize for the technical issues. They probably mean that I'm not doing a great job as a Minister for Digital Transformation, so I'm about to resign after this panel. Now, Senator, it's great to have you on board. It's also great to see so many friends from Europe. Now, a lot has been said already, so I won't repeat many of those things. But let me say that I think the US and Europe, we're both good at exporting different things. You're you're doing an amazing job at exporting digital services, while we love exporting forward-looking digital regulations and standards of all kinds of, covering all kinds of areas, including environmental protection and so on. So I think the first point is that there's a lot we can learn from each other. And given the global nature of cyberspace, Europe cannot succeed if we work on our own. We need you on our side. And that's why it's great to see fantastic progress being made in the US by you, Senator, and many other lawmakers. Now, Slovenia elevated Europe's digital agenda to the very top of our presidency that just ended in the beginning of this year. And we're super proud that we managed to achieve a unanimous approval of a general approaches on both Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act. Now, you can imagine how difficult it is to run negotiations between 27 member states. Some are huge, some are small, some have interest of this kind, some have interest of other kind. But yet we managed to achieve a unanimous support for both proposals, which I think is not that much a testament of our amazing negotiating skills, but rather a testament to a deep desire of our citizens for a fairer and rules-based cyberspace. And obviously, not every piece of those two proposals was smoothly digested. And I would say that the key issues that we were wrestling with is obviously what to do with different kinds of content, be it illegal content or harmful yet legal content. And at the same time, we were grappling with how to give teeth to this new regulation, how to ensure that enforcement is effective enough. And there are also some other issues that have already been addressed, but I think we've made some great steps, and I'm very happy that the Parliament is making many more at this very moment. So that would be for a start.
Senator, over to you.
Very good. Well, thank you, Minister, for being on the call and for heading up the EU. It was very exciting for Slovenia. And I am proud to be a Slovenian American senator as well as a Swiss American senator. I think heading up caucuses with both things. And now that the Swiss are losing Senator Portman because he's retiring, we're going to have to figure that out. But I love both countries and have spent a lot of time in them with relatives and the like. So thank you, and especially thank you for the invitation. So the questions that I heard raised here was the Digital Markets Act and what it has in common with what we're doing with this self-preferencing bill. And I think that there are many things that it has in common, getting at the way the companies are doing business. Both my legislation and the Digital Markets Act focus on addressing anti-competitive self-preferencing, which is the major thrust of our bill by the digital gatekeepers. And some of the content issues have been addressed in other bills. Actually, just today, out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, we had a strong bipartisan vote on some content issues regarding children and content on children. So you see both things moving. The competition side, I think we'll get the first airing on the Senate floor. The House, as you know, did that 18-month investigation. And so now we'll get to, can we pass stuff? I will say yes, because I have been talking to Leader Schumer about this in the US Senate. I know he's interested in getting floor time for these bills, and that's what we need in the Senate. You probably all learned about our filibuster, all our rules. I'm not going to go there, but we need there. The President Biden, is really the first president in decades that have come forward with a major executive order about competition, and that's everything from ag to tech to pharmaceuticals. And so they have people in place that know a lot about this at the different agencies and are interested as well. And then, as I noted, the House actually led the way, which you all know, with David Cicilline and Representative Buck, with this 18-month investigation. So you can kind of see all three legs of this stool. I'm not going to talk about the courts right now in the U.S. because that actually is one of the impetus for action, because the Clayton Act and Sherman Act are kind of Magna Cartas for enforcement, have been shredded in part, not completely shredded, but shadows of their former selves, that what they once were, because of court rulings. And so that's part of the impetus in the U.S. about actually passing these bills. And so my prediction is this year, at some point, these competition bills come to the floor of the Senate. And I am working with other senators. The companies have been vociferously lobbying against them. $70 million has been spent last year lobbying against these bills. And this doesn't even include the ad campaigns that have been run against the bills. And I have 3 lawyers. But they are really good lawyers, and we are very proud of the work that they have done. So, I mean, the fact that the committee senators withstood this lobbying assault is kind of amazing for the U.S. When it's not an immediate crisis. So that's what gives me hope. We're going to get something done on the floor. And so I would focus somewhat on my bill, the one we just talked about with the self-preferencing, as well as the App Store bill, as well as potentially some of the news bills, and was raised algorithms. There's some really good bipartisan bills on algorithms, making them more transparent and the like. So my hope, if it gets too close to the election, the midterms in the fall, it'll be harder. So that's why I want to move this sooner. The House has already passed most of these bills, different versions, and we're working with them. There's not daylight between us in terms of our coordination. That's good. And they also have to bring their bills to the floor. So that's where we are procedurally. So like I said, this is a new dawn, and I don't think they were ready for us passing these bills after spending $70 million through the committees. I think that was kind of a big surprise. And I don't think it would have happened except for the good work that's gone on with the EU.
That's very encouraging indeed, Sandra. Thank you. So I think we can have a freer discussion now. So I don't know if Chair Cavazzani or Mr. Schwab or Minister wishes to take, or Mrs. Schaldemose wishes to follow on. Yes, Mrs. Schaldemose.
Yeah, but thank you very much, Senator. It's really interesting to hear and to learn. I mean, we have also seen a lot of lobbyism around the European Parliament, but I also think that the fact that so many agree on the need to do something. We have seen a lot of issues when it comes to how to create a good environment for a good democratic debate online, how to fight disinformation, for instance, or how to create a level playing field between companies. And you know, we have also had we learned also a lot from the whistleblower from Facebook, Frances Haugen. She visited the European Parliament as well, and I think that on this basis, there is a rather broad common support behind the need to regulate the platforms. We haven't done it since year 2000, and that was before Steve Jobs even thought about the iPhone. So and Amazon was not paying off at that time. So the world has really changed. So there was really a huge support in order to do something, also cross-party. But of course, we have differences to some extent on some of the small issues. But in general, we also think that it is necessary to really make sure that we have a more trustworthy environment. The DSA is looking into how we can make sure that content moderation works in a good way. We are not saying what is illegal and what is legal, but we're saying if it is illegal, then what will happen? We are also trying to ban dark patterns. We want users to know what they're doing and not being pushed into a certain direction. And then we want to also recommend the systems to be more transparent, so people know why they are being recommended certain things, also to avoid rabbit holes and things like that. So we are very much discussing on the DSA how we can regulate this without over-regulating, because we will not compromising the freedom of speech, which is very, very important for us. But we also want to make sure that what happens online is more trustworthy, and the users needs to have more rights. And then we have discussed, as you probably know, also whether or not to close down accounts like the one we saw with the former President Trump. Should that be possible or not? That has also been a part of the discussion in the European Parliament. But just to let you know that we're also discussing several different things, and we come from different angles, but we succeeded in agreeing that we need to do something. So I'm really
Could
happy.
I ask you just what the timetable you think is on the digital market? I know I talked to Margaret Vestager, where she was here about that, just what that timetable is.
On the DSA, we expect...
Market Act. The
yeah,
Market.
No, the Market Act. It's Andreas, but I think, Andreas, you could answer that.
Andreas could maybe.
Well, I'm sure that Christel is as optimistic as I am that we will be able to close it soon, probably at the end of April. If, and I have to say that looking to our Slovenian colleagues, if the Council can agree on the very strong position of the European Parliament, that is, we don't want to boast with this, which is better and stronger than the position of the Council. But we are confident that we have good arguments to convince them.
I will not answer to this kind of provocation. But what I wanted to ask the senator is, so one of the main issues that we've been tackling during our negotiations was, how do we bring about this much needed new rules without hampering innovation and SMEs? So how do we ensure that we strike the right balance? Because obviously we're talking about, when it comes to DSA and DMA, about super complex and lengthy pieces of regulation. And additional red tape for the big ones, but also for some others. So we really try to advocate for a proportional approach, meaning obviously more regulation for bigger and more impactful players, and obviously less or even no regulation for the small and growing ones. So I was wondering, how do you intend to strike this balance between regulation on one hand and innovation on the other?
Good question. And I think one of the arguments some of the big tech companies use is, oh, you're going to stifle us somehow. And my argument is that none of this is really going to stifle them. It's actually going to promote more competition. And you do always want to keep that in mind. And it's one of the reasons that we have focused on the bigger monopoly dominant platforms, right? Because you want to allow startups to keep developing. Obviously you do. And we had 40 some startups sign a letter from California, most of them supporting our bill, right? Because they feel like they're getting shoved down. And just general policy in the US when it comes to antitrust has been that you want to encourage more and more competition all the time. And when you have situations where dominant companies shove it all out, then you're in real trouble. And that's what's happening right now here, when Google has achieved over 90% of the search market, and they're basically able to bully large, entire industrialized nations. And I really don't think when you're making this case to the parliament, the all-powerful parliament, I now understand, when you are making this case that you don't have to choose between competition and innovation. I think our argument is that the work that we're doing, and yes, you got to look at every detail, actually is going to promote more innovation for the next Google, right? For the next Facebook. And I think that's the case that we make, while always listening. I cannot tell you all the meetings and feedback we've gotten from companies. We've changed our bill numerous ways on both this, and then they also argue on the security front, right? That's another argument that's made primarily by Apple. And also they make the argument on the competing with China front. Those are most of the arguments we hear in the US. And so we have incorporated changes to our bill, which of course you should look at as we're looking at yours in response to that.
Thank you. Chair Cavazzini, do you wish to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would love to come in also with actually a question if I have the chance, but probably also commenting a little bit on what the minister said, and this is probably also the interesting discussions we had in the parliament. To my mind, and I understood also Senator Klobuchar in the same way, all the proposals will actually help SMEs. I mean, they will be beneficial for SMEs because now they don't have a chance at the market. And also what I have really in my mind, of course, as chair of the Internal Market Committee, that at the end it will be better for businesses that we prevent the fragmentation of the internal market. Because I mean, we saw a lot of national legislation in the EU coming up, and at the end it's of course always better for everyone, and especially also for consumers, to have the same rules all over Europe. But my question is, Senator Klobuchar and my colleague Christel Schaldemose had mentioned already, we had a very lively discussion in the parliament, and this is how it should be. This is how, of course, the big advantage of also our democracies, that we have these public discussions and we meet stakeholders and we form our opinions. And at the end, after heated discussions in the parliament position on the DSA, we have actually a very strong point on surveillance advertising, because a lot of MEPs feared that exactly this business model is also creating harm on the users, but also creating unfair competition, because the advertising market is in a handful of like 2-3 companies at the end. Is this also being discussed in the US?
What exactly? What was you saying? I just didn't hear the last part. Which issue is being discussed? Can you just clarify it, Anna? I was just asking if you could clarify the question.
Yeah, sorry. The internet in the European Parliament is very bad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
If this question of targeting surveillance advertisement is also being discussed in the US.
Yes.
Sorry.
So that is the exact. Yes, and this comes out of some of the Facebook whistleblower testimony that we actually have dealt with in another committee in the US, not Judiciary, the Commerce Committee. And one of the things what you learn when you read The Ugly Truth, the story of which I highly recommend, 2 New York Times reporters wrote about Facebook, the whole business model, which I know you know as experts, but it's unbelievable, is done to target people, as you say, and use their data. And use it and then target advertising. That's the business model. So what we are trying to do with a number of proposals to protect kids and upgrade our laws on that, to get a federal privacy law, and you've got some better privacy laws actually. 3, get at the algorithms and making sure that we are able to figure out what they're doing, make it transparent, allow researchers in. And it's also about making sure that people get reimbursed for their data in some way. That might be a tax if they use the data. It may be some other way to do it. But they're just basically raking in all the cash over people's data. And then finally, companies like Apple actually have stepped in, and I know you know this, and have said, okay, you don't have to have your data shared to the consumers, right? They've done that on phones in our country, and they have basically given people that choice. And what they found is the vast majority of people say, no, I don't want my data shared. And so that's kind of a war between the companies, because the other Apple, they don't like that. Facebook doesn't like that Apple did it, but it gives us a roadmap, I think, that you can use and we can use to show when people are actually given a choice about their data being shared without them really knowing what it's being used for, to target for money for ads, they say no. So I think that's a guidance. I hope that answered the question. It was kind of a round and round, but okay.
I understand, Senator, that you need to leave this event for another meeting, which is a great shame, but we're enormously grateful to you for having had this, having taken part in this transatlantic discussion on such an important issue. And if the other panelists could agree, there are a couple of questions, so we could have a short Q&A session.
Continue on without me, but thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in person. And if when I'm at that Munich security conference, you know, if anyone of your people from your countries are there that want to discuss any of this, we can maybe do a side meeting or something. All right.
I will be there. I will be there, and I would be very happy to meet you there.
Okay, let's try to figure that out. And I look forward to seeing you there. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
So it's great that we can make concrete advances in transatlantic dialogue. The question that's been put in, at this stage, I feel tempted to hand over to the ambassador. I don't know since this is a joint event, but I'll just read out the question which has been put to all the panelists is from Giga Turk, and it asks, how would the DSA and the DMA impact the events such as the recent deletion of more than 100 Joe Rogan podcasts from Spotify and arbitrary cancelling of accounts on YouTube? Will it make it less or more likely, easier or more difficult for the platforms? Mrs. Schaldemose.
Maybe I can answer. I mean, if we get DSA adopted in the way we want it to European Parliament, it will probably not make it neither easier or more difficult. But if it is removed, users have a chance to complain and get a reason for why things has been removed. And if it was not legal to remove, then it will have to be put back on the platform. And there are several things that needs to be taken into account. First and foremost, of course, illegality, but also terms and conditions of the platform. The platform's terms and conditions must not be against the fundamental rights and privacy and things like that in the EU. On the other hand, they have a right, of course, also to decide what kind of content they want to have on the platform. So it's a combination. So I don't think it will be neither easier nor more difficult, but I think that when it happens, it will be easier to complain and understand the reasoning behind, because you will have rights in that respect. I hope that was enough answer.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I don't know if Minister, you'd like to come in at this stage, or perhaps make some remarks, and then I could pass it back to Chair Cavazzini. And
so maybe just
conclude. Yes,
of course, just a short thought on the issue that's been just touched upon. So I think this idea and notion of a due process is key. So I do believe that, just a second. Excuse me, can you hear me? Okay. I apologize. Again, technical issues. So I do believe that this notion of due process will make this kind of arbitrary actions less likely than they are today. Because obviously, we as citizens and users will have certain basic protections that we do not enjoy at the moment. So greater clarity represents, I think, a win-win situation, since the companies will have a clearer set of rules to abide to, while us, the citizens, will have some additional avenues for complaints or clarification of our rights.
Thank you, Minister. So perhaps to round off the roundtable, yeah, Mr. Schwab. Yes, of course.
I would like to add on that, because citizens expect from us, and this is an issue that we will have to discuss again in the context of the Digital Markets Act, that the law is applied, and that the big companies do not just commit to apply it in the future, but that they stick to the rules. And therefore, there will be a discussion around how can we make sure that the European Commission does not ask companies to promise that they will stick to the law, but will impose on them to be obliged to stick to the law. I know that the Commission is a bit scared that there might be some risk of getting that not perfectly right, but waiting again, as we have been doing in the last 12 years, for companies finally maybe to apply the law as it should be done, that is something that for the Parliament is unacceptable. And that, I think, is a point where, Minister, you could also help us in the Council because we feel sometimes not easily understood. Although we see that there is a problem to apply the law, this is not about a gratitude of companies, it's an obligation, and there is no discussion that this has to happen. Maybe we can also later with Christel and with the other colleagues, Anna, discuss about that, because I think citizens on both sides of the Atlantic expect that the law is the law and that companies don't promise that they maybe will apply it.
Yeah. You wish to pick up on that, Minister, or Chair Cavazzini?
I would just like to say that absolutely I welcome this kind of dialogue, and I would say that we've been very, I would say, very welcoming to all the proposals and ideas coming from the European Parliament. And yes, I would be delighted to meet up with all three of you to discuss these issues. In the end, you know, this will have to be an agreement of all the key institutions as well as the broader European community, and we need to work closely together. But what I would also like to point out is the development of digital rights and principles that is also currently being underway, and it's also, I think, an area where we are a step or two ahead of the others. And despite the fact that this declaration will obviously not be legally binding, it will bring a lot more clarity to everything that we've been talking about in the past hour.
Chair Cavazzini, would you like to make perhaps some closing remarks, or pick up some of the threads from this discussion?
I think I'm not really in the position to do that because I had really audio problems. I only understood half of it, but one thing I find important and very encouraging, that I have the feeling there is a lot of people in the US working exactly on the same agenda, and I think we should really converge and also have more exchanges between legislator, and I really thank the Parliament office in organizing that. But yeah, sorry, I had a terrible connection.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you, Chair. No, I think we heard the very good news today that the Senator Klobuchar was optimistic about the US legislating on the same issue. So it's in everybody's interest that the dialogue takes place across the Atlantic to converge as much as we can. So at this stage, I don't know if either of the rapporteurs or the Minister wishes to make a closing remark. If not, I could hand back to my Slovenian colleague or the Slovenian ambassador to say a few words and to thank everybody. I thought this was a very interesting and very stimulating discussion, and we're very grateful to all of you for taking part. So, Ambassador, perhaps you would like to close out the session.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Indeed, I completely agree. I also had some problems in between, so I had to plug on the phone. But now I hope you can hear me. I'm really delighted to hear, and obviously this is the necessity that we. Of course, it's not our job, but between the legislators on the European side and the American side, you are doing, or we are now doing this kind of a connection, and I think it should be kind of a mechanism so that they can be in touch and exchanging, because at the end of the day, the devil is always in the details. But we are going in the same direction, and this is really encouraging. For me, I'm looking also as a user, because we are all using the digital devices and applications and everything. So I'm really grateful that this discussion took place today, for all the inputs, and I think we can look with the optimism on this transatlantic, let's say, dialogue to continue now at the level of the legislators. So thanks again, and I wish you all the best to all of you, and back to you, Mr. Joseph.
No, thank you so much. That was perfectly said. So it remains for me just to thank the Minister Andrijanič, thank Chair Cavazzini, thank Mr. Schwab, Mrs. Schaldemose, and also thank the Ambassador for the excellent EP Slovenian cooperation that was underlying our event today. So, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And goodbye to Washington. And Brussels, of course.
Bye.
See you soon.